somebody today who does really good stuff in her work life. She might not have stood on the Olympic podium, but our guest today has helped many, many athletes get there. Mm-hmm. Her name is Nanci Guest, and she is a registered dietitian, a personal trainer, an NSCA certified strength and conditioning specialist, and she's worked with professional athletes over many, many countries and many, many disciplines. She was the head dietitian at the 2010 Vancouver Olympics and a nutrition consultant for the Russian Olympians gearing up for the 2014 Sochi Games. She also, and we really want to get into this, she specializes in genetic testing and personalized nutrition. She runs boot camps, and she even consults for food companies like Cliff Bar. So we're in awe of all that Nanci does, and we're really looking forward to talking more about the science that she's involved with and how we can all be better vegans. Hi, Nanci.
Really glad to be here.
I wish that I had met you during my career, but to start off on this whole DNA conversation, in 2010, might have been early 2011, but it was about a year and a half before the games. This field seemed like it was just on the forefront of kind of getting going. So I was training at the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs and had a genetic test. At that point, I was like, they're going to find out that I don't have that much talent. They're going to kick me off the team. I was like really nervous about this DNA test. Like, what are they going to find about me? But a couple of things emerged that were, really didn't change my route to the Olympics or even necessarily how I trained, but it cleared some things up for me that just made more sense. And one of those was it came back that I had a sprinter gene. And my, I had a pretty stereotypical body type for a professional road cyclist, which is what I did for 10 years before I switched over to the track. And switching over to the track required that I build an incredible amount of muscle in my glutes and my hams and my hips, leading into the games to be able to get off the start line. Because my sport is from a standing start and we're in fixed gears. So you just have one gear. So you've got to have a big enough gear on that once we get up to speed, we can, travel at 60 kilometers an hour. So that realization and that sort of understanding of how I was able to build those muscles and why I was able to, I'd always really been able to succeed in short distances at the end of long distance events. And it never really made sense because everyone was like, oh, she's endurance, right? Even when I came over the track, her endurance will help the track. But I had that, I do have a sprinter gene. I had that muscle snap that is needed in track cycling. So that just started to make more sense. And it also, quite frankly, it just fueled me with more confidence, right? That I was kind of given this gift and it is in there and that I can do this. The other thing that came back is in the diet part about it, which is, some of the parts that we're going to talk to you about is that.
Well, let me comment on that part first. Just so I know you sound very excited about this, which is great. So I have a lot of good information. So what the research shows actually is that sprinter gene is benefiting endurance athletes because, of course, as an endurance athlete, that's how you're breaking away from the pack. That's how you're getting ahead on the hills, and you need that sprint. So very few endurance athletes, unless you're going 100 kilometers or across Antarctica, you need that anaerobic threshold. And we know sometimes that's even more important, your power genes and your power ability compared to that endurance or your VO2 max. Of course, you need both, but it's interesting that it's not a full dichotomy like that. So having that power gene we see is highly prevalent in elite endurance athletes. So it's that was, of course, part of what made you so successful.
That's clearing things up even more. I may go back. Maybe go back to it. Maybe I can stay on the Olympic podium at 50. The other thing that it showed was that the diet, that would be best for me, they labeled it as Mediterranean. And by that point I was plant-based. And so it was, again, just more of a confidence builder at that point, because I wasn't planning on changing my diet no matter what that said. That lending towards more fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, that type of diet was working for my body, for my DNA.
Yeah. I think we need to be cautious because we don't really have robust research that can tell us precisely what type of diet we should follow. We can narrow it down to some of these versions of genes that change the metabolic pathways or modify them. So perhaps we have a certain response to saturated fats or refined grains or sodium, but it gets really complex with dietary patterns. So as you know, in the Mediterranean diet, you can be almost 100% plant-based, or you could be very heavy on the cheese and the meat and the fish, and that you could still classify as a Mediterranean diet, even if you were having still lots of nuts and seeds. And so there's just such wide variability in that. So I think as far as the genes we look at, we really follow very strict criteria on what we would accept as being applicable to give as a recommendation, as an actionable recommendation. So I think the specifics really matter there, because there are a lot of genetic testing outlets out there, and it really is the Wild West, and it's important to sort of rein it in and follow the strong science, which unfortunately in this field, which I'm a part of, I would say about 50% of the tests out there are very poor quality and giving you information that is not backed by evidence nor science.
What you just said, Nanci, is a great segue into understanding what, they were testing my genetics. I mean, I didn't ask a lot of questions, like I said, because I wasn't, I didn't have 10 years ahead of me to learn. I mean, it was like, this was it. And I was like, okay, great. Thanks for the info. And it was, it was a while ago. So sort of new frontier, like you said, but what were they testing in my DNA that gave them this, result that was here nor there from what you're saying necessarily of this sort of type of diet? I mean, what were they really looking at?
So what nutrigenomics is, the field is looking how your genes influence or determine what you should eat. So what the optimal diet is for you, but not so much sort of a wide swath of food, such as a whole dietary pattern, but more so specific nutrients. So what they would be looking at is dietary scores. So they would look at research that if someone had a high score for the Mediterranean diet, they were consuming so many of the list of foods that are high in the so-called Mediterranean diet, which we know varies a lot, even within regions around the Mediterranean. So within that, they're looking at responses to more specific nutrients. So your different vitamins and minerals and your need or your sensitivity towards certain types of fats, if you respond well to monounsaturated fats, if you need to cut back on your saturated fats. So the dietary pattern is a little bit more elusive, but with nutrigenomics, we are looking at very specific pathways as opposed to what we call complex traits, would be your risk of obesity or your risk of cancer, or the thousands of genes that are involved in height, or your VO2 max or strength. We're really bringing it back to just a few genes or a few pathways where we can see that your version of the gene. So remember, we have about 3 billion letter pairs. If you remember from high school biology, A's go with T's and C's go with G's. Those are the nucleotides, or the rungs of that DNA helix, the ladder. And so one of those differences in a letter could be the difference between blue eyes or brown eyes, straight hair or curly hair, or how well you absorb iron, or how well you absorb vitamin D, how well you recycle vitamin C. So it gets very specific. And it's important when you're doing a genetic test that you look at specific recommendations so it can be actionable. So if I tell you right now you have a 60% increased risk of cancer, what are you going to do? The same as the public health recommendations tell you. Eat more fruits and vegetables, don't smoke, don't drink alcohol, exercise. There's not really anything specific that you can take action on. But if I tell you that you're poor at absorbing vitamin D and you should make sure you're supplementing, or you should look at your blood work more often and look at your serum vitamin D, that's very specific information. And so when we offer genetic testing services, as I do with athletes, I'm giving them very specific feedback. And if we look at 75 genes, I can tell them out of those 75, hey, here's a red flag. Let's take action on this. Maybe there's 30 areas which will help them optimize their diet. And so this is really the crux of genetic testing for personalized nutrition. How can I optimize your diet guided by your unique DNA, your unique genetic profile?
Yeah, because my sister, my identical twin sister, took the 23andMe, so I didn't have to take it. But she sent me the results, and I had no idea what to do with it, except for that I was bummed out that I was so white. But other than that, I had got no information that I could actually change anything for the better.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.